What's up, everybody? Thanks for listening to the Whatcast. We hope you're doing good. Mike, are we going to do some UFO talk tonight?
Yeah, it's been a little bit since we talked about UFOs, so why the hell not?
Yeah, it has, and there's so many more UFO footage and videos pictures that have come out that are just more and more insane. There's actually supposedly the best Bigfoot footage ever recorded floating around. I got to take a look at. I'll send it to you.
Yeah. What, do you know anything about it?
No, I just saw a still of it, and I'm just like, it doesn't surprise me that the greatest Bigfoot footage ever recorded has come out after AI has made such a big leap.
I mean, in fairness, I've seen that headline about a gargillion times, so...
Exactly, yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but we're going to talk about one of the coolest UFO photographs ever, I think.
Yeah, and the weird thing is, it's only been in the public eye for like 2 years.
Yeah, when you had me look it up, I was surprised that I had never seen a supposed photo of a UFO of that quality before. And it's like it's not from 2 years ago, right?
No. So this is the Calvine UFO photograph. So if anybody doesn't know what we're talking about, maybe just pause for a second and just do a quick search so you can see what this photo looks like. But basically, the photo shows a diamond-shaped thing in the sky with a plane flying behind it. And this was just declassified 2 years ago. But it was, the photo itself was taken in 1990 in Scotland.
Oh wow, it seems older than that, but the quality.
Yeah, I mean, well, looking at the quality, yeah. But there's kind of a reason for that, which I'll explain as we go. But this the events that led to this. So I'll start with the story, because this photo has kind of been something in UFO lore for a while, but it was never there was no record of it. There was nothing. No one ever knew what happened to it. There was no record until 2 years ago in 2022. But what happened was 32 years ago, there were two men who still have not identified themselves or been identified by any sources. So these two men are still a mystery. Well, one of them is a full-on mystery. The other is a kind of weird, different mystery, which, again, I'll get to it when we get there. But anyway, these two men were working as chefs and in this restaurant near the Scottish Highlands, when one evening during the summer, they decided to go for a walk. They were walking around on the hills near Calvine in the Scottish Highlands. And for any of our Scottish listeners, I apologize if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. I'm dumb. That's all I can say. So it looks like Calvine, so that's how I'm pronouncing it. If I am wrong, then please send me all the messages telling me exactly how wrong I am, and also call me a dummy.
It's Calvine, you asshole.
Yeah, or maybe it's just Calvin. I don't know. Anyway, the two men were walking along these hills when they spotted a big diamond-shaped flying object that was just moving silently in the sky. And it kind of freaked them out because they had never seen anything like this. So they ran into the woods and kind of hid among the brush there. And then they heard this jet. So they looked out and they see this jet fly through the valley. And then 2 minutes later, it came back around and it started circling around this object. So when the two men saw this thing circling around the object, they pulled out their camera and they started taking pictures. Altogether, there were 6 pictures total of this object. One of them was the one that has been published. The others are a series showing this thing in the air, and allegedly there's even one photograph that shows both men kind of like doing a selfie with it's an old camera, so it's not like they had a selfie stick or anything, but they just held the camera out at arm's length and took a picture of both of them with the object in the sky behind them. But out of the 6, the one that was published is the only one that's known to exist right now. So why did it take so long to come out, though?
And I have to say, how did it stay hidden so long, with the 90s being, a good decade for UFO books and people digging into that type of hidden stuff?
Well, what happened was either both of the men together agreed, or whoever was the one who owned the camera and the film ended up taking this to Scotland's a newspaper in Scotland called the Daily Record, and he submitted it to them for publication, thinking, we're going to get this story out, and this is like the most amazing photograph that we have that anyone's ever seen, and it's irrefutable proof of a UFO. And keep in mind, this is 1990, so an object like that would be fucking, no one's ever seen it. I mean, even now, seeing something like this is unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1990, having something like this that's just completely silent flying along, but they submit the actual negatives to the Daily Record for publication. And the Daily Record, instead of running this, they brought these negatives to the British Ministry of Defense. And at that point, the British Ministry of Defense covered it all up.
Right, made it top secret, got rid of it. Yeah, okay.
So they sent it to the Ministry of Defense. As soon as he sent it over to the Ministry of Defense, they passed it on to London. Well, he passed the pictures on to them first, and then the Ministry of Defense from London came in and told him to obtain the negatives. So the picture editor at the Daily Record sent them to a press officer named Craig Lindsay. And when they got sent off to him, as soon as he got the negatives, everything just got locked down. And that was that. And for some reason, the photos, so I guess in the UK, after 30 years have passed, anything that's considered top secret typically will get released. And for some reason, it took 32 years for this to get released. But there were parts of the report from the Ministry of Defense, including the identities of the 2 hikers and a bunch of the information that they were able to obtain, that is not expected to be revealed anytime before 2072. And they say that this is because of, quote, privacy concerns. But all the reports that they released were heavily redacted. So there's a lot of information missing there. And the Ministry of Defense claims that the negatives were returned back to the Daily Record, but the Daily Record says that they never received any negatives and have no idea whatever happened to them.
Ooh, how funny, something so simple. We gave it back, really, we did.
Yeah, but also, how easy is it to say, no, we mailed that back?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's weird, but there's a lot of theories on what happened with this thing. So, the fact that it's covered up by the Ministry of Defense, and there's this whole question on who the people are and what happened to the negatives. It leads... There's definitely something being covered up, but is it necessarily a UFO? And the other thing that I think is weird is that there's been so much publicity surrounding who these people are that, and nobody has come forward to say that they were the ones to take the picture,
Right.
But there is one clue as to who one of these men might have been. Apparently there was the original photo that the press officer had retained when this was the original photo that was sent over before the negatives were requested. But on the back is a note that says copyright Kevin Russell.
Perfect.
So they tracked down a bunch of people named Kevin Russell, and they weren't able to find anyone who had any link to this or admitted having any knowledge over this. So either one of them is lying or it was a pseudonym. It's hard to say.
Yeah, or somebody from the government just wrote that on there to muddy the waters.
Right. Yeah. So when you've seen the picture, what do you make of this picture? Like, just looking at it.
It reminded me of Muir's photos. Like it looked a little too good to be true. The fact that it's older is what made me not discredit it right away, even though that's a big thing. Like when AI first started, the good looking stuff was stuff that was made to look old.
Yeah, it's easier to fake it when it's got that unclear outline and lower grain.
Yeah, exactly. It's easier to make something look messy than look clean. But to me, I was just shocked to see a photo like that good of a photo, and to never have heard of this. I don't know. It almost seems like it almost could be a creepypasta. I mean, is all this confirmed as being released from the British government?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah, I'm just shocked. Just that photo's shocking, and the fact that they've kept this hidden this long.
I've heard. So you're familiar with Nick Pope, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So he's been out of his office for a while now. But he said that he had a copy of this photo in his office at the Ministry of Defense. So it wasn't public, but he had it hanging in his office.
Oh, wow. Those cheeky devils.
I know. But the photograph was actually pretty heavily scrutinized. It was handed over to Dr. Andrew Robinson, who's the senior lecturer in photography at Sheffield Hallam University. So he knows his shit. But he investigated it, and he put out a 35-page report on his analysis of this particular photo. I'm not gonna. A lot of it is just like explaining how he came to conclusions, but like he goes over the print analysis, covers the paper type it was printed on, the film type that was used, the film grain, the print size. He goes into the actual analysis of the image, talking about the background, the object in there, the plane that's in the picture, and then starts breaking down the camera lens, like all this technical stuff. But ultimately, what that all boils down to is that the photograph is a genuine copy from a negative. So there's no tampering done in the transfer between negative and the picture. The picture now it's in black and white, but based on his analysis, he determined that it was likely reproduced from a negative on original color print. So the original picture that the witnesses took would have been in color.
Ooh.
And as far as he was able to tell in his analysis, the image that's in the photograph is 100% genuine and was something that was in the scene. It wasn't anything that was done manipulating the film afterwards. If the way that he worded it was, if this was faked, it would have been something that was faked on location. So meaning they would have had to put something in the sky and taken a picture of it.
Right, like throwing a pie tin like Billy Mayer.
Yeah. But this does not look like a pie tin.
Not at all. It's very interesting that there's a airplane in the photo as well for reference.
Right. That's another thing that is kind of a big deal, because the Ministry of Defense previously stated in reference to this photograph. So the witnesses that took the picture, they claim that this event happened on August 4th. There's no way to determine whether this date is accurate or not, because, again, they can't find the witnesses, but this is just based on their story. It was August 4th, 1990. So the Ministry of Defense claims that they had no planes in the area at this time. And this particular plane is a Harrier, a British Harrier jet. And they said that they had no Harriers in there. But the phrasing of no known Harriers means that this was not well, I should say, if we're assuming that the date given is the true date, then what this could possibly mean is that the Harrier jet in the picture was not a British military jet, but it was one that would have been privately owned by BAE Systems, which is a defense contractor that produces the British Harrier jets.
Ooh.
So they used them a lot when they were testing advanced technology. So one of the explanations here provided by this, he's a YouTuber, but he is also, he worked on the BBC for a documentary series that covered different things, like different aspects of science and philosophy, but also kind of got into like fringe stuff like UFOs. But the dude's name is Simon Holland. And he proposes this theory based on the fact that we have a picture of a Harrier jet. The witnesses presumably wouldn't have any reason to lie about the date that they saw this. So he's kind of presuming that this was not a military operation, but it was something that the defense contractor was covering up. So he was looking through and he found out that Marconi Advanced Materials, which there's a lot of UFO conspiracies tied to Marconi. So that's a different rabbit hole we could go down some other time, but just kind of create a frame of reference, the fact that they're involved here. But he found out that Marconi was based inside BAE headquarters in Lancashire, and that they were likely working on an advanced stealth skin material for the United States Air Force. So what this would have been like something like you'd see in movies where it's the outside of the craft is like reflective and it's undetectable to radar and hard to see with the naked eye, that sort of deal. But Simon tracked down this guy named Ron Evans, who was the man who was allegedly behind the British aerospace stealth program in Wharton Field in the late 80s. And he said that Ron didn't confirm any testing, but he explained the use of what he called metamaterials that are used to hide aircraft from radar. So based on this conversation and what we're seeing here and the cover-up and all that, he's guessing that there's enough evidence to suggest that there was some link here between the private defense contractors and what we're seeing here. And he thinks that the Ministry of Defense knows about it. They're just refusing to say anything about it because it's not officially a military operation, because these are private contractors that are, basically doing testing on experimental craft.
That would make sense.
Yeah, for real. But there's other theories as well. There was one theory that I can't remember the UFO channel now, so forgive me, but I'm sure if you take a quick look on YouTube, you can find it. But there's this one guy on YouTube who was analyzing the footage, and he presents a pretty interesting theory, but it doesn't explain all of the cover-ups and why there's only one picture out there and why it wasn't released for 30 years and why the identities of the people that saw it are still being classified. But his theory is that on the day that the photo was taken, weather conditions were very specific, where it was creating a lot of fog in the area, and he was able to track down, based on the post in the foreground and the way that basically the landscape of the picture, he was able to determine where this vantage point was. And he said on a normal day from that vantage point, you would be able to see a mountain peak. But in this particular picture, the mountain peak is gone. And since it was well known, or since it's been analyzed and it's been determined that this is not a fake video or a fake photo, that it's actually, what they were filming was actually what they saw. He is suggesting that this may have been a fog obscuring the mountain, and what we're seeing remaining is just the top peak of the mountain, doing like a Fata Morgana sort of situation where it's kind of mirroring itself on the fog in the picture. And he said it's probably likely that when they were witnessing it, it didn't actually look like that. That what they saw was just the mountain peak, but because they took the picture in the way that the lens is designed and everything, it would have created this kind of mirror image of the top of the peak. I don't necessarily know if I believe that. It sounds a lot like one of those like know-it-all photo guys, like, oh, well, clearly this is what. But I mean, when you've got somebody whose job is to teach photography, like he's the senior lecturer in photography, so like he's like the guy in the university, and he's saying, I would think that if that was some sort of artifact created on the film or by the camera, that he would have been able to determine that.
Very true. Good point.
Yeah. So there is, it's kind of weird, all the cover-ups, I guess, and all the things that kind of happened along with the cover-up. So the press officer I mentioned earlier, David Clark, who is now he's a doctor. He's got his doctorate. So Dr. David Clark, he mentioned that his team, when they were going through the information here, he explained that this UFO was believed to have been what's known as a target designation companion for the F-117 Nighthawk stealth bombers. So basically what that means is that this craft would have been like a spy blimp, essentially. He said that this was an unmanned vehicle. It was very large, and it was equipped with a high-tech ground mapping laser. And this craft itself was based on the photo and using the Harrier jet as a reference. The craft itself would have been between 100 feet and 130 feet. But apparently this created a lot of issues. The official who Dr. Clark had spoken with in the military, he refused to give up his name, but he said that this shot was a 1 in a million chance that this craft was going to be caught on camera. And so whoever this high-ranking Air Force military official was, flew to Scotland to interview these two guys that took the photograph.
Oh, wow.
And apparently there was a lot of ruckus coming from the military or from the Pentagon, I guess I should say, when the picture first showed up in the Ministry of Defense, and then once they got the roll of the negatives, apparently the higher ups in the military went nuts about it. So what is alleged, I guess, is that it was likely a military event, but it wasn't exactly the stealth skin thing that Simon was talking about. This was basically a spy balloon sort of deal. This would have been deployed from a U.S. military facility that would have been located on one of the Royal Air Force bases in Scotland. And when this was photographed, it was just 2 days after the start of the first Gulf War. So after Saddam invaded Kuwait for the first time, and the Gulf War had just started. So it's thought that maybe this was like a test run for the deployment over in the Middle East during that time period. The base that they would have launched this from, it's a particularly isolated base on the tip of a peninsula, and it has a 10,000-foot runway, and it's also got an emergency landing site for the space shuttle.
Whoa.
So just in case it needs to land there, that like this is where it would land. And this place has a history of classified material. In the 60s, it was a naval aviation weapons facility that was designed to store classified weapons. And the U.S. was on this base until 1995, so 5 years after the sighting.
Mm-hmm.
But based on what Dr. Clark was able to reveal from his whoever this officer was that he was speaking with, this also tied in with a lot of other sightings in the area. So there were always these weird things that would occur on the base. There'd be weird high-speed radar blips and unusually loud jet noises that would be heard in the area. But the craft that was flown in this picture is also being linked to the Belgian UFO wave that happened in late 89 and into mid-1990. But many witnesses during that UFO flap reported seeing large triangular or diamond-shaped objects that were flying at low altitude, and some even claimed that they saw lasers or lights being fired on the ground from these things, which would match up with what the claimed purpose of this vehicle was, which was to be a ground mapping vehicle that the stealth bomber would follow behind, and it would basically act as like a, this is what's here, blow that shit up or don't blow that shit up.
Wow.
But there was a lot of stuff on this that was kind of, I guess, considered circumstantial evidence, but it was contained in a declassified report by the Ministry of Defense. It was a 4-volume, total of 463 pages, report on UFOs called Calvine. And the report talks about a lot of the U.S. black projects at the time, which in this report also included the SR-71, the stealth bomber, and then there's 2 sections that are heavily redacted, which also contain 2 redacted photos. And when citizens have tried to get the unredacted reversion of the report released, the Ministry of Defense says that the report was accidentally destroyed, because of course it was.
Yeah, no kidding.
But there's one weird part that was not redacted, and it makes reference to remaining Astra/Aurora photos. Now, do you remember the Aurora program, that whole conspiracy theory thing?
Yeah.
With the Aurora spy plane.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that it's referenced here, and they didn't redact that, but it references photos that were redacted, but leaves the name Astra and Aurora.
Huh.
So it's like all this stuff is tying together to kind of point to the fact that this is likely a military test craft. But going even further, there were patents that were filed by a man named Salvatore Cesar Pais. And Pais was he is actually currently employed by the United States Space Force, but he previously worked for the Department of the Navy and made a lot of patents during his time working for the Navy that have weird propulsion systems and things that don't seem like it would be based in reality. But one of his patents, and keep in mind, this wasn't a patent that was applied for. This was a patent that was applied for and granted. But this shows a diamond-shaped craft that's propelled entirely by microwaves.
What?
And the chief technology officer of the U.S. Naval Aviation Enterprise, James Shee, wrote to the U.S. Patent Office supporting his work, and in in his reference letter, he said that China is already investing significantly in this area.
Wow, dude. So the whole idea of these being man-made craft, maybe from stolen technology from UFOs, I mean, that's not just what the government's saying to cover their tracks or what skeptics are saying. That's a very real possibility. I mean, we got a pretty good pile of evidence here.
Yeah, and the fact that there's all these, and granted, a lot of this stuff is just kind of like making connections where there's a lot of assuming going on, but just based on the analysis of the photograph, for one, saying that whatever was there, there's been no manipulation going on, and two, the fact that the military covered it up. There's links to or links between the United States Air Force and the Ministry of Defense. I mean, we've talked, just look at the Rendlesham Forest incident. That was a U.S. military base on a right next to a British military base. So there's a lot of areas where there's U.S. bases that are alongside or within UK military bases. And with the fact that the negatives went missing, only one photograph was left in existence, and the fact that someone from the United States military flew over to interview these people, it makes me think that likely what happened is that whoever this individual was took the negatives so that they would never be released.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I wonder who it was though. Like, who is this guy?
Lou Elizondo.
Yeah, that's who it was. It was the ghost of J. Allen Hynek.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can see why it was buried and why we haven't heard of this or seen this photo. It's, to me, I had a wise man once tell me, if you want to look for bullshit, just look for any type of cover-up. They don't cover up everyday things. They don't cover up legal things or normal things. Nobody covers up things that are mundane. Covering shit up's not easy. So they, if they're covering something up, it's something they feel they need to cover up, and it automatically, basically proves that that bullshit's afoot. Things are being altered, tampering's going on, and there's an agenda behind it.
So, with all this stuff in mind, I want to go back to a case we covered a long time ago, the Cash Landrum incident. And in that one, it was a diamond-shaped craft that was surrounded by helicopters that seemed to be trying to support it. And the craft was giving off intense heat, and it was enough that it melted their dashboard. And if you remember, afterwards, they both experienced effects similar to radiation poisoning.
Yes, they did.
And they were in close proximity to this thing. If this thing was one of those patented crafts that's propulsion system is based on microwaves, that would explain the radiation and why the military helicopters were surrounding it, because it was an unmanned craft, and it was probably an early test of this thing, and these helicopters were there to kind of make sure it didn't crash. If they had to, they'd support it or tie it up or whatever. I think they said it was attached by cables. But it explains what happened there. I mean, right here, we've got a similar diamond-shaped craft, and then we've got the patents that are out there that were granted for these diamond-shaped crafts run on microwave propulsion. So we do know that microwaves give off radiation, and if it's a malfunctioning craft, who knows what it could have been blasting out there.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And these poor women suffered burns and years of health issues, hair loss, rashes, all sorts of shit.
Yeah, and that's one of those cases that I mentioned when I talk about watching Unsolved Mysteries again. You can actually see them interviewed. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and the old ones when they covered it, yeah, they were still. I'm pretty sure they both are dead now, aren't they? The kid's still alive, but I think both of the women are dead now.
Yeah, those health complications caught up with them. I mean, it lasted the rest of their lives.
Yeah, and you can't. You have a case like that, you can't be like, oh, they're making shit up. Fucking look at them, dude. Like, you think they're just like, oh, let me find an excuse for my cancer and make up some fantastic. No, what they said is fucking what happened, and they got cancer as a result. It's fucked.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, to me, there's just so much weirdness with this case, and it goes to show that just because a UFO isn't an alien doesn't mean that there isn't still plenty of weirdness involved in it. Like, I don't think this was an alien craft at all, but there's plenty of weirdness surrounding it, and it makes it a fucking really weird story.
Yeah, I mean, it says something for governments trying to cover these things up and how they've always been studying them, or at least trying to reproduce the technology and test that technology. You know, when you see that photograph and we get the full examination, I'm like, the way they break down how the photo's basically real is pretty convincing. It's pretty thorough. You couldn't ask for much more as far as an investigation of a photo goes. Do you think we should be paying attention more to these photos that come out nowadays that are just so astonishing? Like this, I gotta send you this real quick. Like this, I saw today, and this stuff's getting ridiculous. It really is. And if this is like being filmed by multiple people from multiple angles in a public place, you know, just the way it should be, like the Castle Rock UFO footage. But like, should we be? I mean, we should be paying attention to all of this, but just with the AI art and all that stuff, it's just at everybody's fingertips. Everything has AI stuff in it now.
Yeah, that's the big problem, I think, because like with the old stuff, there was negatives, so you could review the negatives. You know, with digital, you don't have negatives anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing to say whether or not it was manipulated.
Yeah. It's a lot easier to delete something than to burn it somewhere or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like the negatives used to kind of be like the receipt, you know?
Yeah. You save them if you wanted to reprint the photos again.
But that's it. All right, I'm pulling this thing up.
Take a look at this thing. This is the type of stuff that's coming out like every other week now.
Yeah. And the other thing that you have to consider is viral marketing too. You know, UFOs are all over the place. Like, this could very easily be viral marketing for something, or the way that it's moving makes me think it's probably a drone with something attached to it.
Right. I totally agree.
Or it's just completely CGI. I don't know. But I don't think it's an alien.
Yeah. It's not a flying
saucer.
saucer.
I miss the days when fucking UFOs were aliens. Like, those were the days. That shit was so fun. And now I just like everything is like, oh, it's just fucking stupid military people doing stupid military things.
Yeah, it was so much more scarier and intriguing.
Yeah, yeah. I want to go back then to those days, man. Like, that was the best.
I mean, I'm sure there's an aspect to that stuff that's still involved. I mean, I don't forget, like Paul Hellyer talking about, there's 12 different species of aliens on Earth that the Canadian government knows about. So, I mean, there's definitely something going on with other species of beings. Maybe like you say, they're interdimensional or whatever. But I still think that there's something there with that. There's too many reports of people reporting a variety of different creatures and then the same creatures. So I think there's something to that still. That's still fascinating to me and terrifying. Something's going on there with that.
Yeah, there's something going on, but I just want it to be. I just want to go back to the alien days, man, where we had UFOs that were piloted by greys and reptoids and mantises and all that good shit. I miss those days, man.
With all the movie remakes, why aren't they remaking like Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
Because Spielberg's movies don't get remakes. Because by the same logic, like why haven't they remade Jaws yet?
Yeah.
Because Jaws already exists, and if you remake it, it's going to be a fucking copy of Jaws. Just like every other shark movie out there.
Yeah, dude. I fucking heard a few years ago that they were doing a remake of They Live. I was like, please, just don't do that.
Yeah. I could definitely see that happening. Absolutely. And it would be so fucking commercialized and shitty. Like it would take everything that the original stood for and just bastardize it.
Absolutely. They would just throw in like a Daredevil fight scene like they do in every single movie now.
Well, not only that, they would use like, because the original, the whole thing was like anti-capitalism and anti-media and all that, and they would be throwing in like fucking advertisements in there now, you know.
Yeah.
Like, oh, let's get some product placement in there, even though all the messages are consume, obey.
Yeah, it's still got to be a Pepsi signed verse.
Yeah, and put some fucking like Rachel Maddow on a news program or some shit.
Or Beats headphones. Blue
Yeah.
Chew.
All the good shit.
Yeah.
But that's the world we live in now, man. It sucks, and like all Hollywood is just fucking shitty remakes of books or shitty remakes of classic movies or sequels to fucking milk the nostalgia prostate. That's all it is. Like, look at how we've had fucking 3 different Ghostbusters movies that were all done in like the last less than 10 years, like last 8 years or so. We've had 3 Ghostbusters movies. The last Ghostbusters movie, like 1 and 2, part 2 came out in 1989.
Yeah.
Like, fuck off. Why are we doing this? And they're like, I just heard they're doing a fucking Happy Gilmore sequel. Happy Gilmore was what, late 90s, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're getting a sequel that, like, fuck off. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like, does nobody have any original ideas in it? Well, I mean, there's plenty of original ideas, but Hollywood doesn't give a fuck about them. That's for the indie people to figure out.
Right.
Hollywood only produces fucking bullshit.
Yeah, I remember when I watched whatever the last Avengers movie was, and I had the big dramatic ending where I had all the characters and the actors'
all
signatures.
The portals and like 87
well, it was
different heroes and shit.
Right before the credits when it started. It was all dramatic, and it was like blah blah years of the Avengers, and I was just absolutely blown away. It's been that many years.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
It really is, of Marvel movies, and I always run across these clips of directors bashing those movies, and I'm just like, well, I'm sorry, I mean, I'm sure you'd make a cool Marvel movie if they gave you the chance. If you did that, I'm sure you'd be able to make it cool. But I mean, even myself, I'm so fucking tired of it. I'm so tired of seeing, the constant posts like, will Sony let Marvel use, Spider-Man again, and all the different, like, Superman's been recast for the 15th time. It's ridiculous. I'm so over all that shit.
I never really got into the DC movies all that much. Like this new DCU that they tried to do. But that being said, I fucking loved Ben Affleck as Batman. Like, I think he was the best that they've ever had as Batman.
Really?
Especially because he was like fucking like old Batman, and not old, but like, 40-something Batman, like who's been on the job for a while now and has gone through some shit. Like, and the way that he played him was just so fucking great. And the suit, best suit, hands down.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'll have to check that out. I really enjoyed the newest one with that kid from Twilight. I thought they did a great job on that movie.
I liked that because it was a detective story. And they've never done that with a Batman movie before. It's always like an action movie.
Mm-hmm.
And this was, well, let's have Batman, the world's greatest detective, be a fucking detective.
Right, yeah.
And it worked. It was fucking good, man. I really liked that movie a lot.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to all the stuff they're doing with that. The sequel to that. I'll even watch the Penguin thing that they did.
Yeah, I've heard the Penguin show was really good. I haven't seen it yet, though.
It's a show, huh?
Yeah,
Okay.
It's a Max show.
Yeah, I enjoy those, but yeah, I don't watch any of the Justice League stuff. I think the last Marvel movie I watched had to be Black Panther, and that was like after it was on DVD and shit. I just don't care anymore.
Man, I love the Guardians of the Galaxy movies are great. I've been a huge fan of all of those. And surprisingly, the Black Widow movie was really, really good.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, it had no reason to be as good as it was. Also, speaking of had no reason to be as good as it was, the Shang-Chi movie. Holy fuck, is that's a fun one.
I did watch that one, and I did like
Yeah.
that. I was disappointed they're either canceled or keep stalling what they're going to do with that character.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with him, but I really liked that movie a lot. But the Black Widow movie, though, like it was supposed to come out between the last two Avenger movies, and then for whatever reason it didn't. But when it finally came out, it was so good, very, very, very worth it. I would say, like it's not, because I was thinking, oh, this is just going to be a waste of time. The character's already dead. Like, who cares about what happened in the past now? We're moving forward. But it was very entertaining. There was some good action. I didn't like how they changed Taskmaster. That was my main beef. Because that's not Taskmaster. I'm sorry, it's not. But
Yeah, that
if
really,
it had been a different villain, it would have been fine.
right. I think that Taskmaster was a little bit too classic of a villain to do that too, just to introduce the Thunderbolts.
Yeah. Or just actually introduce Taskmaster.
Yeah, that
Like they could have just said he was a mercenary that was working with the Red Room. They didn't have to say, oh, this is the Red Room's top creation or whatever, just to add to Natasha's tragic backstory. Like, you didn't need to do that. You could have just said that he was the trainer for that's all you had to say. He's the trainer for the Red Room, and that's why he's on Natasha's heels now.
right. Yep, and it would have matched the comic book well enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you could have had actual Taskmaster instead of some mute girl who is being manipulated.
Right. How cool! Yeah. How cool would that have been? Like a straight up live action Taskmaster. Like I don't.
Yeah, dude.
Keep like the. I don't know. I don't consider it rubber in the comic books, but keep the straight skull mask. Don't make it a motorcycle helmet. That when they.
Yeah, I mean they've got skull masks that for the military.
Yeah.
Like they're just like plastic masks or whatever. But keep that and he can have the hood. Just get rid of the fucking cuffed boots. Like, modernize him a little bit so he doesn't look cheesy. But it would have been so easy to do.
Well, I think that Taskmaster was so extravagant. You can leave the cuff boots. I think you can leave the cape.
I don't know. It's ridiculous. If you were to go live action, it'd be like going live action with Hawkeye. It would look absolutely ridiculous.
That's true, man. Yeah. Even like something as simple as the Fantastic Four and X-Men costumes, like just didn't translate to real life.
Yeah, man.
UFOs.
What a tangent. Yeah. So remember that UFO photo.
go check it out.
Well, someone in the Discord has been asking for more comic content, so here you go. Here's some comic content for you. Everyone else turned it off like 15 minutes ago, but
I'm sure.
Yeah.
If you didn't,
you're one of the good ones.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.